There we go. Okay. All right, so let's call the ordinance subcommittee meeting to order at 5:39 on the dot. So we have tonight on our agenda, we don't have any minutes to approve, correct? Because I think Tamara's doing those.
Correct.
And I haven't seen them yet. Thank you. And there's no public speaking because everything is about this, which is Councillor Cobb's request to look at the Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2002, tax agreements for affordable housing developers and options for tax title foreclosures. So we did look at this before and tried to get an idea of what we could use it for, and we wanted to come back to it and see if we could get some more information. And we also wanted to give you an opportunity to let us know what you thought it could be used for.
The principle I had behind this was two pieces there. One is residential, the other is commercial. And so it helps provide incentives to expedite the taking of residential in the event of a problem. The idea is our city currently doesn't have a problem. I don't see that as we don't need it. I see that as we're fortunate. And this gives us an opportunity to really study this and actually have this in place so if we ever develop a problem, we have the tools in place to handle them quicker than we currently do now. That's generally where I was going with this. But the hard part, even on the commercial bit, was to put in constraints so there's a good system of controls and I was going to say so that no one group can actually abuse the power that this gives you considerable. These incentives are pretty powerful. Checks and balances, a system of checks and balances is where I was going with this. So I was looking at, for the ordinance committee, this meant serious study to look at, there's got to be a community out there that already has this. There's sample ordinance writing there that may or may not fit the city. And then it's up to the committee to decide whether this is something they want to do part or whole or required to do.
So as I say, I've looked at this a few times, and I'm in agreement that, from what I've found, we don't have a problem with this right now. And that was one of the things that, I'm a little confused about. It's like, well, why would we
Because we don't have a problem. So this is the seen as reactionary.
But if you're talking about... If we're talking about doing a more in-depth study, then we could have Barbara maybe push it out on the listserv to find out if there are other communities who actually have an ordinance on this and whether or not it's working for them.
Right, and I think Jessica would be helpful with this as well. I did try to look to see if I could find any other communities, and my initial check, I couldn't find anything other. The one thing I did find, which was something that kind of helped make me understand it a little bit, was something I got from Welcome Home Massachusetts, which is a group that supports local housing initiatives and affordable housing. And this was under their policy section for creating and preserving affordable housing in existing properties, which makes sense. I mean, we have a lot of existing properties. I mean, we look at the mills, but what was for me, it broke it down into these steps. So the 2002 law created a number of tools municipalities can use to shorten the tax taking process. So one of them is accepting a deed in lieu of foreclosure to obtain the title to a delinquent property without going through the taking and foreclosing process. Which is what this is. And that would waive any back taxes, that process. I mean, which, it seems like if there was a situation, that would be an interesting way to be able to go around it.
What brought it to mind was it provides a powerful incentive to help, so to say, speed up the redevelopment of large commercial properties that are just before they become so costly that nobody wants to do anything. And what I looked at there was, as our CPA monies dwindle over time, this can take a piece of that if we have an important property that they used to say that how would we define the limits on this. fits the criteria.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with what Nathan said, there's no rush.
Right.
You know, this is something, because we don't have a problem now, so we don't have to react to it. This is something we can take our time and do right. This provides tools for the executive branch to, so to say, act on in the event something like this does happen. And there are checks and balances in it, so it's not something that hopefully we're taking lightly.
Right. And what do you think?
Well, I just want to let you know that there are, and it is certainly more costly, and it was like 2 years ago I did a tax title taking through the traditional process instead of a deed in lieu of, which those owners were perfectly willing to do because they were
Right.
basically abandoning some landlocked property.
Right.
But we didn't want to do that because we were pretty sure that that property was contaminated, and
Uh-huh.
the tax title process protects you from that.
Right.
So, you know, if it's a house, you know, down the street and you know, feel pretty confident that you're not going to run into that problem, that might be a good option. But properties like the Mills here or the other property, the Everett Street property that we knew had contamination problems, you wouldn't necessarily want to do it that way because then you run right up against DEP that says, oh, now you own it, so you now need to fix it right now.
Right.
Versus if you own it in tax title, you can hand it and sell it with the contamination on it and say, not my problem.
Right. Now, I wonder how to, because I feel like as I was looking through this and reading through this, one of the things that was within this section was the brownfield redevelopment. And so, now if it's contaminated, couldn't we get it designated as a brownfield? Wouldn't that be...
That's what we did with Everett Street, but then there's a whole process that you need to manage as a municipality, and I think that Stewart did that at Everett Street. You were here for that process.
Yeah, and we also, we in Ordinance, we did a brownfield redevelopment section. We accepted something for the brownfield redevelopment. I don't remember exactly, it was years ago.
Right.
But I feel like the brownfield and this piece were kind of linked in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember, I'll have to look into that a little bit more.
But you got to remember, this provides an option. This doesn't supplant anything else that's out there. So you can then look at a property and decide, is this the tool you want to use
Or not.
Or not.
Okay.
And right now, we don't have that option.
Right. And how, do we have a lot of properties right now that are, do we have any properties right now?
We have none
That-
that fit that. There might be one or two at risk, but that doesn't mean they're going to continue that.
Right.
Yeah, no, we have approximately 5 properties in tax title right now. They're all land at low value. It's less than $2,000, including interest and penalties at this point.
Wow.
Well, 2,500, like 2,500, 1,000 in actual principal taxes owed.
Mhm.
However, one of those is in a payment plan with me that she's fallen delinquent on, and she still hasn't paid her 2014 taxes. So, you know, that may become and probably at the end of May, she's going to come back on the rolls,
Right.
and we'll start
Pressure.
encouraging her again. She got a nice letter from Betty today, and then also in May is the cycle for the new takings, and I do know that there's one property coming over to the tax title side that is a residence.
A residence.
Yeah.
Okay.
That
Now-
the owner has pretty much said, I'm not going to pay. So
Right.
we're going to have to go through the process.
So, and would something like this, in the sense of a residence, do you feel like that might be something that would be beneficial to?
I'm not sure his situation is complicated because of the other liens on the property
Right.
that are state, whatever.
Right.
We've never dealt with those type of liens before, so we'll see how that all pans out.
Right.
Tax title lien is the strongest lien, and what you do get to do, if you took the deed in lieu of taxes, it doesn't eliminate all the other liens.
All the other liens, like.
But if I do a tax title taking, if the bank is owed 20 grand,
Right.
good for you.
Right.
We're not paying it. You know, we get to sort of
You have a
jump
little
in-
bit of distance.
we get to jump in front of them and not deal with that part.
Right.
Whereas if we.
But if you have the deed, then you.
Then they have the lien, and then they can turn around and foreclose. We are first. Tax title is very powerful lien. It comes first in almost everything, except for a federal
Yeah.
tax liens come in front of us.
So it becomes a supplement to Councilor Ziegler's question for the clerk. So not only are there communities that have this legislation, to ask them how have they used it and what kind of properties.
Right.
If we find that it's hardly ever used across the state, how much time and effort do you want to put into it? One of the examples that came to my mind was the mill out here before it was actually bought privately. This one here that's being used. This would have, because I look at it this way, why we're waiting to get all that back taxes? There's a piece of property that's really not doing anything for the city.
Right.
And money there's a time value to money. So I was looking at that as it's going to come to a point where the back taxes create such a burden that that's going to be very difficult to redevelop that property.
But if we had a clear deed on it, and that we could, then the redevelopment
Right.
would go much quicker.
That property had a huge bank lien on it. We tried to pressure the bank to pay us,
Mhm.
but they just didn't.
That was my question again, is why wouldn't we just go into tax title then on something like
We
that?
didn't because we had this final developer who came through who said, we're really gonna do this, we'll pay everything. And
Right.
it was a lot of money to get.
Wow.
And the fear was that if we actually took it, that we wouldn't get as much, and
What do we do with it?
we'd have to auction it,
You have
and
to
whatever
auction.
the market would bear is what we would have gotten, versus we got $650,000 when they closed on that. It was a lot of money.
This allows you to actually, this is where the committee can actually determine the amount of back taxes you can forgive or percentage, is you can set an ordinance, so we don't have to give a blank check.
Right.
Well, that was one of my confusions with this too, when they're talking about the abatements, is, why would we want to necessarily, granted, you can determine the percent, if you will, but why would we want to just give up that potential money? I can understand, again, if it's because the developer's going to come in and they're going to sell
Right, and
for
if,
that. but-
they certainly,
We lucked out.
Yeah.
they certainly could have walked away, because it was a lot of money.
Mm.
I don't, the other option was if that didn't work, we were gonna take it, the bank was gonna lose and whatever they had in it. And the bank pretty much set us up with this developer, so that was their sort of.
They kind of
that was-
brokered it.
Yeah, so that's really they're like, wait, we're not gonna pay.
We don't want to lose
but-
money. Here's a developer.
Right, but,
That's
we'll
okay.
make this work, don't worry about it.
Right.
But- And so, honestly, it made me really nervous, because I came in and it had been there for a long time, and the number was enormous, and I was like, this is project number 3, what are you talking about, we're gonna wait, and it scared me, and I'm really glad it's not there anymore. But, so could we have used that for that? Yes, if you did like a discount on the interest, you might have been able, but honestly, they couldn't have moved any faster. It was all tied up in tax credits with the state. It really wasn't about the cash for them. It was about the timing of getting and honestly, if we had auctioned it, they would have got it probably for less.
For a lot cheaper now.
Because by the time they paid us and whatever deal they made with the bank, which I'm not even sure what it was, I'm sure the bank didn't get everything they were owed from the developer prior to them.
Right.
They paid a good amount of money for that property.
But in this example, I look at, this fills that gap between a private auction and how lucky we got. That fills that gap.
Right.
If that private developer isn't there, we have an opportunity to apply for the tool.
And that's like something where you could say, if it's a development that we encourage, i.e. affordable housing like this one was, then we could give a break on the interest rate, like half of the interest that was accumulated or something
Mhm.
like that. But only if it's that type of developer, and only to the new, like what I don't want to do is give it to the person who didn't pay from the beginning.
that.
There was-
Oh, right.
Well,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, it's true.
in 2010, part of that was like, oh, there's all these towns with all these taxes, and people would pay if you just give them this one-time relief. And so some communities adopted in that 1 year, a 50% discount on the taxes. Well, that means that there are always certain types of developers that buy a property, let the taxes accumulate, wait for somebody to do something, and if they get that opportunity to get a deal,
Yeah.
then they'll pay up.
Right.
And it was that was 2010. Do you remember that one? I think, and that was like you give it to everybody or you give it to nobody,
Right.
and that I don't like.
No.
Just because the people who pay every year make choices to pay versus something else, and then you give a break to someone who let it slide.
Right.
So you look at this, and can you structure the ordinance in such a way to provide some level of protection for just that type of thing? Again, I don't see us as reinventing the wheel here. Someone has already had these issues, has already developed something that might fit. We just gotta find
So
it.
that's the research that we're going to have to do, is to figure out what ordinances have been written, if they've been used, and to what success.
See, I truly believe Melissa has a good understanding of the legislation. We have some philosophical differences in that she's a little more conservative than I am, so you need to take that into consideration in the balance.
Fair enough.
Which is-
Okay. All right, good. I mean, that's good information, and I feel like that's at least enough for us to get more of a start than we were able to last time when we were just kind of sitting around looking at it like, what does this even mean? You know? So, so I feel a lot better about this, and I think the direction that we're going to go is we're going to do some fact finding. We're going to reach out and
That's my intent to begin.
and see if we can find something that might be a tool that we can use in the future if we so choose. And I think that's that. Cool. All right. Do you have any other?
I'm waiting for property next.
Oh yeah. All right. Well then, I think we can move to adjourn this one. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Very good. It's at 5:56. 4 minutes in the schedule.
They noted the minutes were forthcoming.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Thanks, Justin. You want to switch seats?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think we sent the minutes out before, I didn't have a copy of them.